How's it going? We have another exciting game here to review. So I wanted to look here at a key moment of this game. We had this crazy fight that broke out on the left side after Black's invasion with this attachment, and we ended up with this black group that was trapped, and now this white group that is almost going to be surrounded. And in the game, what ended up happening was white extended from this one stone. As a result, black descended here, and we had a capturing race between these two groups right here. And as we saw in the actual game, like this, white ended up getting captured. So white lost big on this race. But what if instead of extending here, white had tried to escape with this group? I think we would have had a different situation. So the key move would have been just to simply extend right here. And since this move is Atari on these four stones, black would have to connect here. White could come out with this Atari. White would probably have to protect here, and we could have a sequence like this, in which case white could probably break out. And this would be obviously way better for white, and it's hard to say what would have happened at this point if black could have fought back and maybe attacked this group or even this one, or if it would have been able to make eyes. But this would have been a great way for white to fight back. But after white got surrounded, black was able to capture the group, and that was the end of the game. So let's take a look at how we got here. So yeah, it's nice to see the 5-3 point. We don't see it that much these days, but it's nice to mix it up a little. This high approach isn't so common these days, but it's still fine. So I was a little surprised when black tanuki'd away here. This F3 move is pretty urgent. So as we saw in the game, white has a good punishing move here at E3 to attach. But furthermore, black's jump here at F3 is basically sente against these three stones. It's hard to imagine white playing here and letting black get this very nice pincer. So I think it would be better for black to play here in sente, and then simply approaching this high approach here seems like enough to me. We could get this sort of a common sequence where white would get the corner, but black would get some thickness on the outside, which would work pretty well with this shimari in the corner. So I think black could feel very satisfied with this variation. So after this attachment, white haned, crosscut, and this extension I think was a little unusual. Often in these crosscuts on the third line, this Atari and descend is a very good combination. So I encourage you to always think about this first, this Atari and then descend. I think it's not so easy for black actually to deal with this. If black turns here, white can just connect, and I'm not really sure how black is going to make good use of these three stones. So instead, black will probably have to Atari and play this way. And so then if white goes to capture the stones, black will get a squeeze on the outside, and that might be the best that black can do here. So I think that was a bit of a missed opportunity when white just extended, but by that same token, instead of this extension, these two stones aren't as important as on the outside. So if black Ataris here and then just connects, which of course is sente to capture these two stones here, so white would have to save the stones, and then black could play down here, let white respond, and then perhaps approach here, or jump out, or something like that. So black could just get these three stones in sente by sacrificing this stone at Q17. I think that would be a good way to move forward for black. But unfortunately, when black descends, white can then just extend this way, which was a good move, and black kind of just loses these stones. So this ended up being a very good result for white, although this R14 move is nice for black. I think black just needs to play here. It's just so urgent and worth a lot of points. But white did a good job in taking this key point. This is all good. So instead of this, since the ladder doesn't work, white should just extend here. Also, if white extends, then there's no Atari at E2, and white can just block. So this seems a lot better to me than to play this. So although black pulled out the stone, it might be good enough just to Atari and extend here. I think considering the situation, black can be satisfied with this result. The Ponuki isn't so valuable since there's this wasted stone here at A. So white won't be too satisfied with it. So after this, since the ladder doesn't work, we don't really want to Atari and kind of play out this broken ladder. It would be better just to connect here. And we can let black figure out how to handle these two stones, as opposed to playing out this broken ladder. And if black extends, we can just Hane or something like that. So after this, white has a lot of cutting points. So white extended here, black pushed, and white Tanuki. So I don't think this Tanuki is good because these stones down here are just too weak. So white should definitely either extend this way, and we might have some kind of sequence like this, or probably even descend down here, because really this E3 stone, which I'll mark here as A, this is really like the cutting stone between these two black groups. So this is the stone we care the most about. And black will get this painful Hane at the head of two stones, but after white Hanes, black cannot play this double Hane here, because then white could just take the important stones. So instead, black would just have to extend, and white would probably be able to make life in some territory at the bottom, and these stones would still not be connected to the corner. And white would have this very big, these very big sente threats here at C1 or B1. But so after this, by the same token, it was black's chance to take advantage of white's Tanuki and either play out this sequence or probably even just take the one stone. If black takes this stone, I think the game would look quite good for black. It's hard to see how white could continue. Black would have such a strong shape and be totally connected, while these three stones would kind of just be floating, and there would be some attacks on this white group that would be possible. But black played here, white played there. Again, like this is a perfect time where black had sente and could totally use this on the bottom left, I think. But this approach is fine locally. Yeah, so I wondered why white didn't just play the normal Joseki move at G15. This one seems good to me. I can't see any reason to play the F16 move instead, because this leaves a possible cutting point for later, depending on how things happen. Like if black later gets a stone at K17 or something, or black even has the option of just taking more territory this way. Okay, so black decided to invade here, which I think is fine. So white Haned, crosscut. So we ended up actually with a similar situation to the upper right with the attachment and crosscut. And so by the same token, instead of this extension, I would recommend this Atari and descent, like I was talking about before, in the upper right. It's hard to see exactly how black would deal with this. If white just connects here, it looks pretty good for white. To me, I'm not sure how black actually is going to handle these stones, aside from getting some forcing moves at the top, maybe. So black played well here. So I can understand why black played here to sort of make a base and make some eye shape. This is usually a pretty flexible shape, but the problem with this move is it allows white to get this turn, which is just too powerful. It shuts black in and helps these white stones. So instead, we would much rather just push out like this. If white takes the stone, black can just sacrifice and connect. And now these, let me mark them. These triangled stones here are very, very weak. And black was able to do this just by sacrificing this one stone. So this looks like a better move to me to just push out this way. And yeah, so I think white should have turned here. Yeah, no choice there. And it's the same sort of thing here, where, yeah, white should just turn, and if black wants to try and live like this, I think it's just a ko, where we'd have this sort of a ko, and this would be a great ko for white to fight. It's basically a picnic ko, because this territory was kind of gone anyway, and white is so thick on the outside. So white would be more than happy to fight this ko. And instead of this, by the same token, black should just push out here. It's not so easy for white to stop black. White can't just hane here because the cut is too strong. So like this, black can just push his way out and then capture these white stones in a ladder. So that means that white cannot hane here. White would have to just extend, and then black can push his way out like this and fight. And we would have a capturing race where white would be totally shut in, as opposed to what we saw in the game where white actually had a chance to escape. So I think this was a good opportunity for black. But both players, I think, were too sort of focused on the side and black's eyes, as opposed to whether black could push out or not. And again, it's not just a matter of black escaping. Black escaping also is putting pressure on these white stones here, so it really has a double meaning. Yeah, so this, I think, is kind of the wrong direction of play for this E12 stone. This one white stone just isn't that... this one black stone at... Let me just mark it. This triangle stone is really just not that important. We don't really care. Like, these two white groups are pretty strong. It's not the focus. Instead, the focus are these stones versus these stones. And specifically, pushing out here once again. So it really, I know I keep going back to this, but this really is the point. And we could have sort of like what I was talking about before, a sequence here, maybe something like this, where we could have this kind of capturing race where black could make sure that white is totally shut in, and I think it would probably be a seki here. And so white also kind of played along, although white should have just turned here. And we can see that after white turns here, there isn't really like, black doesn't really have a follow-up. I guess that's why this move, this Kosumi here isn't that urgent. Black doesn't have a good way of following up. So that's why I think white should just turn here. So white connected here, but this actually caused problems, as we saw later, because black was able to separate. So instead, for shape, what if we just play this hanging connection here? This seems much better to me because there's no way for black to push his way out. And of course, if black were to try like peeping here, we can just connect. As long as we trap these black stones, we don't really care about this one white stone here, as long as we can escape. So even though this and this seem very, very similar and they're very close, this is the move that would really make the connection between these two groups. And yeah, for this peep, kind of the same thing. White should just push through here. I feel like this was a theme in this game, like important stones versus not important stones, and this one at H10 is not so important. Making the connection between these two white groups is what's important. And this turn here would do it. We can see that there's no way for black to push through. And like this, black would be totally connected, or white would be totally connected. And even though black can live, as we can see here, white could then be very thick on the outside and start attacking this black group with either a Kema here or possibly this way. And so this could look pretty promising for white, at least this fight. So white did turn here, so that was a very good move. And so black kind of drew back here, but I think black should actually just push out. If white blocks, black can turn. And this looks pretty good to me. Even with white getting this Atari here, this would be a lot better than the possibility for white in the game of pushing out more severely, because black can start to attack these stones. Okay, and so now here we are at sort of the moment of truth I was talking about at the beginning of the game. And so it's hard because these are both cutting stones, both these A and B, but it's really B that is the important group, and we just cannot allow black to get this descent and totally shut white in. So white had to instead try to squirm out here, since that is Atari, force his way out, and we could have a fight like this. And if white is probably going to live here, or at least get a Seki, and in doing so, white is going to destroy a lot of black's territory. So this could actually turn out pretty well for white, especially if, could get something like this, white later gets the chance to play a move like this, or like this, and I think white could have a good chance to attack these black stones. But after white got shut in here, it became more difficult. I think white had one last chance here, so it looks like if instead of this, white plays this way, so white really just wants to deny black the eye. So if white plays like this, I think we could have a Seki in this situation. So I guess this is a Seki. Technically, either player could throw in and start a ko, but this would be an incredibly risky ko since the other player gets to capture first. And of course, black could do the same thing by throwing in. So I guess this is sort of like a 10,000 year ko situation where probably at some point one player will just connect and it will end up being Seki. Of course, even if this were to happen at this point, black just has so much territory at the bottom, and this white stone would not be here. Black just has so much territory at the bottom that I think it's going to be a very good game for black. White's only real territory is kind of over-concentrated here, although the upper right corner is big. So white would have to find some way to, maybe start reducing here and then attacking this group or something like that. And that would be white's real chance to turn the tables here, if white could find his way to a Seki. But after letting black just capture here, the game is kind of over after this. So, these situations are pretty complicated and hard to read. So I feel like the real takeaways are like with these attachments here, instead of just jumping out. And I think if both players were to remember this sort of Atari and Descend combination that I was talking about, it could be, where can I find this other move? Oh, it's a variation. And the same thing here. This could be very helpful, I think, for both players to try practicing out in games. And then the other thing is thinking about the important stones versus non-important stones, where this stone was very important, but both players didn't play it for a long time. And this stone here was not so important. So yeah, those are the main takeaways from this game, and I hope that was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed this review. Thank you.